morning. Today I'd like to begin with Psalm 62. For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall never be shaken. How long will you assail a person? Will you batter your victim, all of you, as you would a leaning wall, a tottering fence? Their only plan is to bring down a person of prominence. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. For God alone my soul waits in silence, for my hope is from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. On God rests my deliverance and my honor. My mighty rock, my refuge, is in God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the back they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. Put no confidence in extortion, and set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, do not set your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice have I heard this, that power belongs to God, and steadfast love belongs to you, O Lord, for you repay to all according to their work. I don't have a lot on my mind today. I guess the main thing is last night we had a council meeting through Zoom. The details will come out, or at least the summary will come out in the weekly e-news, but I guess the highlight is, once again, when this all began with the COVID-19 virus, we said we're going to both take our faith seriously and our science seriously. And science still seems to indicate that we're in for a longer haul in physical distancing to try to continue minimizing the impact. And so council has said we'll remain closed, the physical building, through at least the end of May. We're watching it closely, trying to figure out ways we do ministry outside the absence of the physical property. Again, in the model for our neighbors, the seriousness with which we take this, as well as our concern for our neighbors, especially those who are vulnerable. I think when we think of vulnerability, we instantly think of maybe the elderly, those with obvious physical symptoms. But two stories I heard yesterday. One was that the first person, I guess, diagnosed with COVID-19 in Minnesota was actually a 30-something-year-old male Ironman triathlete that just knocked him for a loop. And so even those who outwardly appear to be physically healthy are not immune. And the other story was much more tragic because that gentleman recovered, or is in the process of recovering. But in Michigan, heard the tragic story, and I wish I could remember her name. Skylar is her first name, 5-year-old who died. Her parents, she had pre-existing health conditions, but her parents were both social service workers. One is a police officer, and the other is a firefighter. And so the unbearable grief that the family must be experiencing to be out there serving and needing, through their vocations, to be in harm's way. I'm not drawing a direct connection to their service to her death. I've not read who or how or where. Just simply do know that she died due to complications from the virus. So for us, how do we love and serve our neighbors? It was a great thing to see on Facebook this morning that Diana Vetters, in her vocation in working with the school system in food service preparation, that she and others were out last week sharing meals, and her pimento cheese was welcomed by all. I think of CC Parker last night updated our council that through Our Daily Bread, that the feeding ministry in Seneca, ironically, or not ironically, it does make sense that following the tornado, there were a lot of groups that came in from outside the community to offer help. And so that actually alleviated some pressure on the local food ministry. And yet we know that as those groups do move out of town, there'll be a rebound and a resurgence in need. So So again, Our Daily Bread in Seneca, as well as Golden Corners Pantry, could use any help. Karen Waltz updated us with our local here in Clemson Community Care, where the executive director and her husband and maybe one other staff person has been doing all the order fulfillment because they do not want to expose their volunteers to unnecessary risks. So those ministries are on the front lines here locally. A frustration I have, and maybe you're experiencing it too, is I guess anytime we have difference of opinions, I tend to try to address my resolution as gathering the best facts as possible, gathering and trying to hear the most persuasive arguments as possible. And at this point, I'm still hearing the most persuasive arguments from those who've studied science in the 1918 flu pandemic and said that the rebound, the second wave, was even, I think it might have been by a factor of 10 more deadly than the first go round, simply because well, I guess Philadelphia and Chicago, I think, were the two cities where one opened up and continued to hold their parades, and the other clamped down. And Chicago or St. Louis, I'd have to double check. But the one that clamped down and maintained the physical distancing and said, had a much better outcome. So here in South Carolina, we're doing, I guess, incremental experimentation with reopening stores and allowing local municipalities to make decisions on whether to reopen beaches. In my own mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, now 14 days from now, we're going to have some results to see whether that was a wise decision or an unwise decision. I personally would rather err on the side of caution, but that's me. I will say that I'm employed, gainfully employed, thankfully, by the congregation. It's congregation's commitment, not just to payroll for myself and Pastor Josh, but for all of staff. And we appreciate that. That allows luxury of being able to provide or practice physical distancing. So I'm mindful of those that might really be stretched hard right now. And so my prayers is that we as a society find out ways to address both issues, that people do not have to feel a sense of obligation or an internal pressure to return to work if it's not going to be in safe conditions, because that's their choice between food on the table or health. So I lament that we seem to put ourselves in this box unnecessarily so. But so for today, I hope and pray that you have a good day, that you are able to rely on God, who is our rock, who is our fortress, to remember what I preach frequently, the two greatest commands: to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbors yourself. And by loving your neighbors yourself, implicit in that is to love yourself as well. So let me close with a word of prayer. Holy God, thank you for this new day. Thank you for the gift of your word, where we can seek reassurance and guidance, direction. Thank you for a gift of community, even though we're meeting online in Zoom. How wonderful to be gathered last night with folks from across the congregation, sharing their experiences, offering words of encouragement, trying to seek collectively your wisdom and guidance. We give you thanks, Lord, for the gift of community, and why it hurts right now to not be able to be physically present with one another, but can still reach out in many other ways through calls, text, emails, online, and seeing people physically at a safe distance. So help us this day, Lord, to be patient, to accomplish those things that are set before us, to be words of encouragement to one another, and try to be understanding as we are able. And this we ask and pray in Jesus' name. Amen. God's peace be with you, and have a good day.